Hello and welcome to part 2 on how to draft a vintage Jean Patou dress. You can see a beautiful blue dress in the corner of the screen, and it's a really intriguing envelope design, and I'm going to try to draft the whole top part of a dress down to the belt out of a single piece of fabric. In the last video I already went through an analysis, so if you haven't watched it, do make sure to watch it first. And before I start drafting this pattern on the half scale, I just want to let you know about a 3-part live challenge I'm running this March, which is all about designing and drafting. So if you love these sort of vintage inspiration, and if you love sewing clothes, you're using your sewing patterns, but now you want to start pattern hacking and designing your own clothes, then that challenge is for you. It's 3 live sessions with me, and in depth I go through analysis, like how to create designs for a personal style. Then I will show you how I actually draft a design, and I'm going to concentrate on 2 techniques which are really universal, really beginner friendly, but which you can also really stretch, which are dart manipulation and volume. And then in the final live session I'm going to go through a fit check of the trowel I've created, and of course through the rules on how you can use the same for fitting your own garment. So if that sounds like the sort of thing you're looking for and the sort of push you need to maybe design and draft your own clothes, then I would love you to join me. Have a look at the link in the description. It's free, and the sessions are 3 sessions throughout March. But now let's have a look and draft this blue Jean Patou dress. In the last video I analysed this dress and try to work out how it might be drafted. So if you haven't watched it, do watch it first, because it will make this video a lot easier to understand. And as part of this analysis, I sort of try to work out whether my ideas are valid by making a little paper model. So it's a miniature size of what I'm going to draft now, but it's a really good way of sort of working out whether it could work or not. So I'm going to do this on the half scale, just because otherwise we're going to end up with a massive pattern. You can already see I've got lots of space around to make sure I can actually get it on. So what I'm going to start drafting is really the overall silhouette. So it would be either the front, my yoke shape, or probably the easiest way to do it is to do my back first, because that is just very simple and straightforward. So I've got my relaxed front, which means it hasn't got bust start, because this isn't a very fitted style, and I've also got my back matching it. I've got my sleeves as well, and I've also split my sleeves in half and created a grown-on sleeve. That's the sort of things I teach on my pattern cutting school to my students, how to do all these really important pattern cutting principles. However, if you haven't got your block yet, then just use a sewing pattern and then just take off the ease of the sleeve head. Alternatively, if you have a sewing pattern with a grown-on sleeve, which is what we call a sleeve like that, like a dolman or gusset sleeve, that would be even better. If you have a sewing pattern for that, use that as your starting point. Just take off your seam allowance. And if you haven't got any of those, you can literally, if you have a garment, either again with a grown-on sleeve or a sort of relaxed garment with a sleeve which isn't too fitted, so which has like a straight angle, you can literally trace around it and clone it. Let's draft this. You need quite a big piece of paper, because we need to get a whole back on, at least half the yoke, and of course that bodice part as well. So I'm leaving lots of space above and to the right. I'm going to trace around my block first, and I'm also going to move my dart into my armhole. literally just going down like this because of course I won't need it. So I'm now going to lay on my half sleeve. If you wanted to make it really easy, and you can use that, however I don't think the fit is like that, you could just extend your shoulder for a really loose fit, but I think this might be a little bit nicer if you have a little bit of our shoulder curve, because that's sort of roughly the pose she's standing, isn't it, with her elbows out, and it's fitting perfectly. If you have a straight line, if you put our sleeve on, that would have your arms really high up. So I think sort of aiming for that elbow, hands on upper hip position. And all I'm going to do is just trace around here. And then I know the yoke, which is the widest point, is sort of above the bust line. So if I lay on my bust point is around here on the front. So roughly that level. So I think that's where I'm going to make it its widest. Now that seems a little bit right, so I might move up a little bit, because I'm also looking how long this line is. You can sort of see her shoulder is around here, and then it's probably the same length. You could actually measure it if you want to be really precise. I think it's the same length, probably about 50% extra. I don't think it's double it, so I'm going to move a little bit up. And now the question, of course, I need to now refer back to my model. I think I want a right angle there. I am a fan of right angles, I have to say. We're going to look at the other images quickly, because we had some more. So none of them are that clear what the angle is like. So I always think, oh, on here, there you go, the pattern envelope is always helpful. On here you can see it's clearly a right angle, which is where sort of using whatever sources you have, plus understanding of how pattern cutting works, is really helpful. So now I also, of course, wanted to go down to my waist, which means I actually do have to go a little bit more down. So which is always why it's interesting when you actually start looking at the pattern properly. That will tell you more or less where you need to be. And of course, if that is too long for you, let's have a look. If we move it up more, then if I have a 90-degree angle there, does it get... Yes, so the straighter you make your line, the higher you can go up. So that is quite a good thing to note. So if I go with that length, I just want to quickly roughly measure, so that's 7. But it's actually exactly double. So let's go with it and try it. Quite often when you're drafting things, you can sort of get bogged down by little details, but quite often, you know, if that sort of is telling you, you know, that's a nice right angle, that goes there, then go with it. You can always tweak it on the trowel. So I've now basically I've done the pink part. So it's all done, and of course on the final one, what they've done on the pattern, they've done a little bit of a button stand. So I'm going to draw it on quickly. This. Now, of course, the next thing is to do the yoke, which is attached to this whole part, and also the bodice. I'm going to do the yoke first, And this is where my real life pattern is going to be different from my trial, because can you see this is not a straight line, is it? So I can't fold it all the way. So what I'm going to do is do a hybrid. So I'm going to just extend this line a little bit, and that's going to be my fold line. So what I'm now going to do is fold my paper on that line. Next, I'm going to actually pin it together to stop it from moving, which is always really important because layers of paper like to wiggle around, so always secure it. Now I can trace through. If you haven't got tracing wheel, of course, you can fold it over and just trace it through like that. So I'm just tracing through all the way. I'm also going to mark my shoulder point. And actually I'm going to mark my center back. And pin. And fold. And retrace. Once it's traced through, what I'm actually now going to do, because of course I only wanted the guideline how my back neck is, because of course at the front I want a front neck, and I'm just going with a 12 for now. Of course the original, the blue image, has a slightly wider neck, so you know that is completely up to you how you do that neck. So I'm literally just going to lay it on to the shoulder position like this, and of course this point is the same, and I want another. Oh, now it gets interesting, because at the front of course it's going to end up, if I fold it, this is now my front. On this pattern part, of course, if we look back on our little sample, what I now want to actually draw in is the yoke. So the yoke which goes across her front. So what I need to do is meet this point here, but of course on my center front I need a right angle. So again, the image and the pattern and pattern cutting rules are telling me what to do, which is what I love about pattern cutting. Is with somebody like me, you learn all the basic rules, the pattern cutting principles, and then I sort of just show you on different designs how you can apply these to get whatever result you want. But it's really logical, you know, there's no rote learning, you don't have to learn anything by heart, it's just understanding how things work. So we have our yoke now, which is a sort of combination of the back and the front, and of course this is a fold, and which is also where we would have our center grain. So I'm just going to draw it on for now. So I want my center grain to be here. Next thing we need to do is go back to our back. So I've done my front yoke part. What I now need to do is my front bodice, which is of course attached to the back there, I think at least. This is where it is a little bit of guesswork now. So what I'm going to do is another fold line along this line. I folded it and pinned it again, and now I'm going to trace through just my back waistline so I know where it hits, and I'm also going to trace through the side seam, because this is the step where I'm not 100% sure it's going to work. Up to now it all made sense, the pattern told me what to do. But what I now need to do, of course, is at the moment, you can see we actually got the pattern like this, we just got some paper attached. But if I unfold, if I turn over, this now sort of has to be enough space that it goes, that I can fit my front bodice on there, up to the yoke. So that's going to be the interesting bit. So if I fold it over and just trace through my lines again. So that's how my side seam is going, and this is my base. What I now need to do is make a note of how deep my yoke was. So my yoke on my block or on your sewing pattern, whatever you're using, I need an exact copy. Okay. And now I go back to my fold line here, and I want to put the whole bodice on here. It's to have the same angle. Like this. And of course then I need to go down by the same amount I took off for the yoke beforehand. Which interestingly, if you think again, if you look at it, this is sort of hitting where the armhole is, which is enough space. And so far everything is working out. So if I now, what I'm going to do is actually cut it off, because it's getting a little bit abstract, isn't it? But I'm going to just cut some paper off, not all of it, because of course I might want an extension, but I'm just going to sort of cut it along here and unfold it a bit and just see what I don't need. So I definitely don't need any of this here. So you can see the pattern piece we have is, I've done my front yoke, I've done my back yoke. This is going to be my front bodice here. All I now need to work out is these yellow bits, which is where my front bodice, which is everything on past my folded line here, joins onto the back. So if I'm going to do some markings to make things clearer. So this is my shoulder. This is of course my yoke. And this is my front bodice, so my center front is here. And this is my back bodice. So if I just cut right to that point and I fold it, you can see I've got my front bodice. I'm going to fold over my yoke line, and I've got my back bodice, and we're slightly looking weird at the moment, and they aren't quite there yet, and that's where it sort of gets interesting, because what I haven't done yet are the wrinkles, and there's also a little bit of extra length, it looks like. Oh, not the wrinkles, I haven't done the gathers yet, I apologize. So I think if I maybe close my waist dart and transform that into tucks along there, then I think we will get this basically more or less the right shape. And of course I think the extra length, you can see there, can be pulled up, and then if you sort of look, there is sort of like some volume back there, and I think that is because we're sort of pulling it up a bit. But we'll find that out on the trial as well, how it works. But the next step for now is just to mark where my waist dart is at the front, like this. Cut into it, and I'm just going to continue cutting upwards. Then I can glue it like this. That's a good starting point. I think it needs a little bit more because there's quite a few gathers. So I'm just going to maybe do it more like this. But that's sort of where you can decide exactly how you want it. If you wanted to, you could also actually make it parallel until you got exactly the right angle. I think it's going to come out on the 12 whether that's enough or not. So I'm going to do quite a nice amount. Like this. Okay, now the last thing we have to think. So what I basically want to do, this needs to be put together, like here. Then of course I'm going to have lots of sort of gathers. I'm going to just mark, I'm going to have sort of pin tucks. Then of course I need to see where it needs to be stitched to. So I'm going to mark thinking about here, I'm exactly at that underarm point. So I'm going to mark that underarm point exactly here as well, which is correct. And then I can line them up again. And again, decide where on my gathers to start, which is going to be my second balance mark. So which means, of course, I got some sort of 3D-ness here as well, because it's of how it's being pulled over. So I think that's going to help me put in my sleeve. And then of course I got this extension here, which you need, I think, for it to sort of be caught in there and fit really nicely. So this is where it's going to be really interesting, is there is this going to be caught to our back. So I think it needs to be extended a little bit. So I'm going to put some paper to it, like this. I'm going to turn over and then literally just trace my back shoulder through again. And of course you should pin it on the full scale. I'm being a little bit naughty. That's my shoulder point here. And I'm just sort of drawing in my shoulder line, so I have a little bit more of an idea how that pattern piece could be. So it extends up here, so that's the yellow bit. It's where the front pattern becomes the back. And here we have it, a very abstract pattern piece, which through one fold becomes a back bodice and front bodice, and then through a second fold becomes a yoke and a sleeve. And that's what I love about pattern cutting. You can have what we would recognize as a sewing pattern or a typical, garment pattern, to something as abstract like this, but they both make garments. Now I'm going to get some calico, cut it out, stitch it all together, and then in the next video we can have a look how it all looks as a real garment. I look forward to seeing you in the next session, where we actually find out whether this pattern works. I'm slightly positively excited because it looks pretty, and a pretty looking pattern is normally a good indicator that it's going to work. So all fingers crossed, and I will see you in the next video where we find out how it all works. Do let me know in the comments how you enjoyed it. Are you tempted to try it on, or is it all a little bit too abstract for you? I'd love to hear from you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next video. But for now, thank you for watching.